Hello, fellow Hoyas. Rich Battista here, founder and chairman of the Georgetown Entertainment and Media Alliance, otherwise known as GEMA. This is part 2 of our 2-part video series where we ask senior level alumni the question, what advice would you give to someone who wants to break into entertainment media industry or build a career in the industry? On this video, you will hear from 5 different alumni that you heard from in part 1, and they represent the areas of film, TV, live events, sports, and digital media. So thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. First off, as you know well, there's quite a cadre of Georgetown alums in sports at all levels. And so it seems to be an area that young Georgetown students seem to be interested in. So what is some of your pieces of advice for young people who either want to break into the sports industry or are young people in the industry and want to try to rise up?
Well, I think first of all, it's a great time to be getting involved in sports. As you know, there's just so many opportunities that weren't there, 10, 20 years ago, because teams and leagues are so financially healthy and there's so many opportunities within them. Whenever I talk to someone who maybe wants a finance career, they're like, oh, but I love sports. I'm like, you can do both. The first direction is find your passion. If it's New England sports, then go work and try to find a job in New England sports. If you want to, if you're interested in television, then figure out what role. Like my one daughter wants to go work in film someday. And I was like, there are hundreds of careers. Like, don't just think I only want to
be a movie director.
Right, exactly. There's so many other jobs. And so, first of all, I think it's a great time. I think you've got to pinpoint your passion, and passion is the starting point. Like for me, it was sports journalism. Okay. And then let's figure it out from there. I didn't know if it was written, if it was going to be television. There's so many different avenues. Now I want to be a college admissions counselor, but I think it's a little late to change jobs. But I saw this quote when I knew we were talking today. I loved it. My old boss, Dick Ebersol, is married to Susan St. James, who's a famous actress, although people in this call may be younger and don't remember her. But she bought a dress and there was a label sewn into it, and it said, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Mm-hmm. And I love that because there's so many times at crossroads I maybe didn't do something because I was scared I would fail. And it's all about, scratching your knees and getting back up and being a little bloody. Or as my buddy Rory McIlroy says, you win or you learn. So there's so much more value into trying things and falling flat on your face. And my favorite example is that they say, women read a job description, and if they can't do everything in the job description, they don't apply. Whereas men read it, you guys read it and go, I can do that. And you apply and you get the job. So just know that if you can do everything in a job description, Rich, you're overqualified for the job. You can't possibly do everything. So I think you've got to be willing to fail. You've got to risk it. And there's so much more satisfaction in trying something new and maybe not being completely successful, but man, it's fulfilling when you fill in your blanks.
And what about, there's been a real rise in the last, I'd say, decade in these like sports industry management programs. Georgetown actually has a very good one, and master's degrees in different sports areas. What are your thoughts on that? If you're talking to a younger person, would you say, yeah, sure, do that? Or, you know what, I'm not sure you need to do that in order to get into that career.
I think it depends on the field and the position. Because I don't know enough about, like finance and things like that, if it makes sense. I think anytime you learn more, it's a good thing. And particularly, I know Syracuse was telling its graduates of their undergraduate schools right now, hey, stay in school, get a graduate degree, because it's a tough economic environment out there. So if you don't have something you like, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting an advanced degree. I kind of wish I had an advanced degree, but I never took the time. Once I got in the workspace, I loved it and never went back. So I think it depends on the career track, because a lot of people, a lot of people feel like you can't go very far without an MBA, and so everybody goes and does it. So I don't think I'm qualified to say it, but I don't think I discount anybody on the production side if they don't have one, because work experience in many ways replaces anything you learn in the classroom.
Yeah. And when you look at a resume of a younger person trying to break into business, aside from the passion piece that you mentioned, are there other things you like to see on a resume or in an interview that what comes across from the person?
I like to gauge initiative. And to me, that's what did you do outside of school? And maybe that's just my personal experience that I know I sacrificed some social fun times to go do work, to work on weekends, to make ends meet. But I just think even kids that going, right now, that go out and get a job at Subway and stuff like that shows initiative. And what else did you do besides going in the classroom and doing things like that? So I always ask about their work experience. It doesn't have to do anything with media and things like that, but show me that you know how to work hard, and it may not have been easy, but tell me what else you do besize, things like that.
They may be interested in sports, but maybe they play piano, and that's quite interesting, and they've been doing it for 15 years and have shown that sort of, continuity.
I tell people to sort of watch what they're doing in their spare time, just sort of notice, because it tends to be a clue about where you're meant to go if you're so lucky. So people say, do what you love, and that's a privilege. We have to remember, like, it is a privilege to do what you love. Okay. But if you're in money management and you find yourself thinking about that while you're sitting on the couch at night, you're probably meant to be there. You're probably meant to, continue to strive. I can't even possibly imagine that. That's so not my particular wheelhouse. But I started noticing that interacting with fan communities was really what I just did all the time. And all of this podcasting, writing, the events, all of it has come from that feeling that being passionate about story leads to something bigger and cooler and greater than the sum of its parts. So I tell people to watch what they're sort of thinking about in their and doing in their spare time. As for getting into it, find something that you can really latch onto and just see if you can do something for them for free, which I know is the worst right now. We don't want to, internships should be paid and all of that. But if they have a volunteer program at a con, volunteer. We notice good volunteers, and most of our staff comes from that,
Yeah.
So look, always if you're really sure of where you're meant to be, keep looking for those little opportunities, and take everyone, whatever you can do, because good managers and good team leaders will notice people who are generally talented. Just because somebody's really good at stuffing bags, that's not generally it. When we're in a certain volunteer group, and we have an event, we have a volunteer group, often at least once or twice a year, somebody on my staff will come to me and be like, that volunteer has been incredibly kind, incredibly competent, does what we ask them to do, really quick on their feet, understands things really well, and then we want to work with them more. And 5 times out of 10, that person, when a job comes up, we will pull them in.
Yeah, no, it's I always say to younger folks coming in, always say yes when you have an opportunity.
Yes.
Don't be the one who says, well, I'd like to do that, but I'm busy this weekend. It's
right.
Like, no, find a way to say
find
yes.
A yes.
Find
Absolutely.
yes. And, great things can come from it. And like you said, too, you'd be surprised how, as you know, as well as I do, how hard it is to find quality people. And if you find someone who's reliable and hardworking and competent, they're going to stand out, and they don't even probably realize it.
Yes, exactly.
So make yourself be noticed for sure.
Absolutely.
It can be a really exciting business. And there's a lot of highs and there's a lot of frustrations as you would get with any job. I think what's interesting or unique about, the entertainment business, and specifically working on the creative side, is that it attracts a lot of people in the beginning that are like, oh, I love movies, I want to, work in this. And there's a lot of work that has to go into making these films. And, they're really hard. And, to get anything up off of the ground, it takes the average gestation of a movie is something like 5 to 7 years. That's a long time to be working on one thing to get made.
Yeah.
And so, I think, you'll see a lot of people flow into the business and flow out of it in that first kind of like 1 to 5 years. And so I think, I always say to, Georgetown kids or other interns that have worked for us, it's just like, make sure you don't look past the job that you're hired for. If you're hired to be somebody's assistant, you're an incredibly smart person. You went to an incredible university, and you probably, performed at a very high level. And you're here for a reason, but you're hired to be an assistant. And just don't look past it, and make sure you sort of absorb all that you can from whatever that entry level job is, because you just take in so much through osmosis. Whether it's the jargon that you hear, just the financing structures, or whatever it is. Those assistant positions can be a really great sort of gathering tool for knowledge that you don't even really realize that you're taking in at that
Right.
moment. And so just be open to it. Say yes to almost everything, and just take as much in as you possibly can. And the assistants that I've seen kind of like get to that next level and get those next jobs are the ones that really anticipate and really sort of, just do the work. We're willing to jump in and do that work, because everybody wants to give their notes on a script or cuts of a film or whatever. But, you'll get that great fun stuff if you do the other part of it, which is very simplistic, but shockingly, sort of overlooked.
Yeah. What else?
Those are the big ones. Obviously, phones. It's like this weird thing. It's like I had, when I got my first job in the entertainment business, they looked at me and they're like, "Can you answer a phone?" I was like, "Man, I just graduated from Georgetown. I'd worked at Booz Allen," and I was like, "Yes, of course, I can answer a phone." And they're like, "Well, you've never answered a phone in the entertainment business." And it is like this weird thing. Like, is you're most of the people that go on the creative side either go to work for an agency or a management company or a producer or a studio executive, and the gateway is the phone, and it fumbles everybody up. And like one of those things, it's just like, take a breath and you'll be fine, and just master who's calling. One of the great things is like most assistants get to be on their boss's phone, so you get to hear them talking, and you just get to participate in a way, not vocally, but you just get to like listen in. And I think it's a really unique thing to our business that is an added benefit.
What about someone who's in college now, who's just trying to get traction to find a job? What are 2 or 3 avenues that you suggest that they look at in trying to gain that?
Yeah, I always sort of say, like, what is it that you're excited about? Is it film? Is it TV? Look at who's making those things, both in terms of the production companies, the writers, the studios, what have you, and sort of target, and then go to their website. Look up the companies. You can just cold call, email them, say, I'm looking for a summer internship. Everybody's always looking for interns and people that are motivated and have a connection to what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so that is one thing. And then, as I kind of said early on, it's hard to graduate and go to work in the entertainment industry, because all of your friends are, if they're going to law school or, working in the financial sector or whatever.
They're getting their jobs.
Working for the government.
And they're getting their jobs in March as senior year, and they're all set.
Exactly. You will not have that. Right. Like, unless you got hired into the NBC Page program, or, some of the agencies have very structured, trainee programs that you can get into. More often than not, you're going to have to move to New York or LA, or if you want to work in production in Georgia or whatever, you can, you're just going to have to move there and figure it out. And so there's a kind of a jump before you look a little bit.
Yeah. And what are 2 or 3 things you look for when you do get approached by a college student does reach out to you? What are and you do have an opening. What are the things that you look for, or you ask them to make that decision to hire them over someone else?
That's a really good question. I look at people that ask interesting questions. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that come in and they're like, "Oh, my professor told me I'm the next Martin Scorsese, or I'm this or that or the next." And so it's more like, it's like they are asking interesting questions about, the company or what we're doing, or what have you, and not just telling me all of their accomplishments. Right. But really, it's just getting a sense that this person is going to, whether it's Jax, which is a small team that where you have to wear many hats. So there's no room for the squeaky wheel. So right. Do I think this person's going to drop in and be able to drop into this culture, be a seamless participant in this culture and help elevate the culture and
That's
elevate, you know, the whole teamwork. And so that's what I look for more than anything. Because again, you know, it's like if anybody's coming from Georgetown or Columbia or USC or UCLA or NYU or any of these schools or Penn State, you know, I don't care. You know, you're all smart kids and everybody is very valuable. So it's more like, do I think they'll fit within this?
Yeah.
And within that, I'm always looking to diversify our, you know, viewpoint. You know, I don't need another person that thinks exactly like me. And so, you know, what my experience has been. So I think ultimately is like diversifying, you know, sort of the different viewpoints so that we can fully reflect, you know, the audience and have, you know, varying points of view is always something that we stress.
It's interesting. I don't think students who are interviewing for these jobs, I don't think they probably, and I know I didn't really, you don't even really think about fit. You don't think about, I wonder if this person who's interviewing me thinks he'll be good. You just want to, like you said, talk about your resume and show your accomplishments. And a lot of people, they don't realize that is an important piece, but you're talking to 100 kids who all have great accomplishments and have done interesting things at that age. What's the fit? What's the diversity piece? Are you going to have an interesting voice to lend to the party? And do you have that passion that's breaking through? I always talk a lot about that too. You know, that passion. I think when you really see the passion, it breaks through versus others who kind of have the passion.
I think that's a good one. I think that's really important because you can feel it. You know, there's somebody that knows the answers and that's somebody that feels those answers. And you know, that's a big difference.
Well, look, there used to be a lot of people, and there are a lot of people that went from the law into running or being part of studios in many capacities, not just the business capacities, but creative capacities as well. And that used to be, I think, a really accepted pathway in our industry. I've been asked this question a lot, including a GEMA thing I did in Washington a couple years ago. If you want to go into the entertainment industry, I don't recommend going to law school. I don't know that path is as robust as it used to be. I do, however, think that going to film school as an undergraduate is not ideal. There's one film school in Los Angeles that we quite like the way the undergrads come out, and we think they're very well prepared to kind of enter the space. But knowing how the world works and worked, and knowing history and literature and just the ability to do kind of critical thinking, all are phenomenal skills if you want to then fly from, you know, the hilltop to the West Coast, the left coast, and really get in. And, you know, the way to get into the entertainment industry is ground floor jobs coming from really prestigious schools. It's a business of apprenticeship. You can't really learn how to do it unless you are in it. And that's why it remains a business of apprenticeship. And I recommend, I originally thought I wanted to go be a PA, and I was, I did not do so. But I think that path would have served me just as well as my fancy law degree, although I'm a pretty good lawyer too.
One question on the legal piece for clarification. If somebody wants to be a lawyer in Hollywood, then going to law school, I would think, is perfectly fine.
Oh, right.
You're
100%.
suggesting more if you wanted to be on the creative side more, or maybe break out of the legal mold. Is that
correct? I mean, I just don't know that the pathway to being an entertainment lawyer, which is a fantastic career, by the way, but I don't know that the pathway to being an entertainment lawyer, entertainment lawyers translating to executives is as robust as it used to be.
And why is that?
I think, again, it's about apprenticeship. I think that there aren't as many people running studios who come from a law background. And they used to be, a lot of studio heads were lawyers. Right. Now, a lot of studio heads are, you know, MBAs or former marketing executives, or come from a producerial background. And so I think the aperture has widened. And so it's just there's less people that would be like, if you have a law degree, you'll be an excellent studio executive.
Right. That's helpful. That's interesting insight. I hadn't really thought about much.
And in fact, sometimes I think it's a negative, because I think deal making in Hollywood has gotten increasingly complicated. And so at the end of the day, the goal is to find great programs and not be bogged down in, making the perfect deal. And I think, and I've certainly experienced this personally, where, the perfect deal may not be the way to get the perfect show.
I'll treat it from the tech company perspective.
Okay.
Usually the tech companies start thinking about summer internships as early as October and November of the previous year. And my bet is that a lot of those companies are not pulling back on those offers and those kinds of opportunities as they continue to look for candidates or have extended offers to some candidates for. The biggest piece of advice that I would give students today is be aggressive about this. Sit down, write your list, figure out who the entry points are and who the people are at those companies that you can contact or that you can send your information to, and continue to get your information and your value proposition in front of those companies. I think that inevitably, like, maybe they'll hire a few less interns than before, but you'll still need a pipeline of talent. You'll still want to get in front of some of these people and start thinking about what happens beyond the coronavirus. So don't automatically sit on your hands and say, oh, it's all closed up and dried up, there's nothing going on. I don't think that that's the case at all. I think it may be a little bit more competitive. Mm-hmm. And the ones who are more systematic and aggressive about staying on people's radar screens. I talked to a mentee a couple of weeks ago who had sent an email to somebody I'd connected them with, but had never followed up.
Right.
And had assumed that person that I connected them with didn't respond because, there was nothing to be had. It turned out that this is probably a pretty busy time for anybody who's working. And the proactive people who stay on people's radar screens in polite ways, not annoying.
Polite ways, right. To say, look, I know you're crazy. You may have missed this email, but just wanted to check in. Yeah.
Keep checking in. Sending an email is lightweight, and a follow-up, or even touching base and saying, hey, it's been a month and still interested, or I noticed that the company did X, Y, and Z, and really, I think that really shows some initiative, and that kind of initiative should probably be there whether there's coronavirus or not.
Right, sure.
You should be that proactive and that systematic about like staying in touch with people, and eventually, I got to believe that for smart kids with the right approach, who are thinking proactively about this stuff, like things will work out.
I also encourage young folks, if they have already, to tap into their Georgetown network. I think a Georgetown person is probably going to be more apt to want to respond to an email or help you because you're a fellow Hoya. And so don't be shy about reaching out to anyone in the Georgetown community for advice or, again, for connection.
I get unsolicited emails from Georgetown people or pings on LinkedIn. And I definitely, if people come in the correct way and in a thoughtful way, I try to do what I can.
Yeah, that's great. It's helpful. And that's a great example of LinkedIn's a great example of a place to try to do that reach out.
Yeah. Oh, and that actually, to that, your LinkedIn should mirror your resume. I am awed at all levels of hiring. At LinkedIn is the first place that people go to understand who you are and what value you might have. So if that's just a couple of titles and time periods, you're not telling a great story.
Yeah, no, it's great advice.